I want to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Mr. Jordan Smelly. Jordan Smelly is an internationally recognized and award-winning speaker, certified mental health peer support specialist, and developer of the Assume, a sensory reason framework. Jordan works as the first IDD peer support specialist for the transition support team at Integral Care, where he helps support systems serving people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and occurring mental health challenges. On January 18th, 2026, he was named 2025 Mental Health Professional of the Year by Persons of the Year. Through his lived experience, advocacy, and training, Jordan is passionate about helping people rethink success, build meaningful lives, and create paths that actually work for them. Today's keynote presentation is titled, Build a Life That Works for You. Come on down, Jordan.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning. First, I want to thank E4Texas for inviting me to be your keynote speaker. It is really good to see some of you that I have met virtually before when I spoke to this peer support class. And before I go any further, I want to say this clearly. Graduating from this program is a big deal. It takes commitment, effort, and a willingness to keep showing up even when things aren't easy. So take a moment to recognize that what you have accomplished here matters. Today, I want to talk about what it actually means to build a life that works for you. Because here's what's going to happen. Some of you are going to leave here and try to do adulthood the way you think it's supposed to be done. And at some point, you're going to realize that version might not actually work for you. And that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It means you are learning something important. After I graduated from Tarrant County College with a certificate of completion in audio production, so I wanted to do stuff like our audio guys doing upstairs. Long story short, AV world, not good if you have physical disability and cannot work 12 hours. Just throw that out there. I learned that the hard way. So, I really thought I had my path figured out. I tried to build a career in that field, but somewhere along the way, I came across peer support, and that's changed everything. But before that shift fully happened, I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do, showing up, trying hard, following expectations. And people were still looking at me like, what's going on? And the frustrating part was I didn't have an answer. I just knew I was tired. Not regular tired, but that kind of tired where the brain is done, but the day is not. So naturally, I did what most of us do. I tried harder. And if you've ever done that, you already know it works for a little bit, and then everything gets worse. That's when things started to shift for me. Not because everything got easier, but because I asked a different question. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me, I started asking, what do I need right now? And I know that sounds simple, but it changed everything. Because I started realizing I wasn't failing. I was overwhelmed, and I didn't know how to support myself yet. Looking back, part of why I was so overwhelmed was because I was trying to force myself into a path that didn't actually fit how my brain and body work. I wasn't stopping to ask what I needed. I wasn't noticing what my body was telling me. I was just trying to push through and adjust to everything around me. When I moved into peer support, things didn't suddenly become easy, but they became sustainable. I started paying attention. I started listening. I started making small shifts based on what actually helped me function. I stopped constantly pushing past my limits just to keep up, and instead, I started working with myself instead of against myself. And that changed how overwhelmed I felt day to day. This is something I want you, the class of 2026, to really hear. Behavior is not always a choice. Sometimes it's communication, sometimes it's protection, and sometimes it's the body asking a question we were never trained to hear. That idea eventually became part of the framework I now train others on professionally called assume a sensory reason. A lot of what people call behavior is sometimes overwhelm, stress, sensory dysregulation, burnout, or survival responses that people do not yet have the words to explain. This matters because you're going into jobs, environments with expectations, schedules, people, noise, and pressure. And you can be completely capable of doing a job and still struggle in that job. And that confuses people. But you can do it, so why aren't you? Because being able to do something is not the same as being able to sustain it. You can push through a shift, a day, or even a week. But if your plan is to just keep pushing through, that's not a plan, it's a countdown. At some point, your body will step in and say, we're done. So what actually works? This is where self-care becomes real, not the social media version. Real self-care is noticing when you're overwhelmed, taking a break before you crash, understanding what your body needs, and being able to say, I can do this, but this is what helps me do it well. That is not being difficult. That's being smart. And to class of 2026, I want to say, you are allowed to need support at work, in life, anywhere. Independence is not doing everything alone. Independence is knowing what you need and actually using it. The people who do well long-term aren't the ones who struggle silently. They're the ones who say, I want to do well, and here what help. Now, let's talk about something people don't talk about enough after graduation, your relationships. Building a successful life isn't just about work. It's also about how you take care of yourself when you're around other people. When you're with friends, your body doesn't suddenly stop having needs. You might still be overwhelmed, overstimulated, stressed, or just off. And self-care doesn't stop just because you're not alone. Sometimes what your body needs involves other people, and not everybody understands that. For example, sometimes what helps me regulate might look childish to someone else, like tickling. But for me, that's not about being childish. That's about how my body processes deep pressure. That's how I reset, de-stress, and get back to functioning. If you ignore what your body needs just to fit in, you might be included, but you won't actually feel okay. And long term, that's not building a successful life. So part of this is communication. Your friends are not mind readers. Being able to say, I know this might seem different, but this actually helps me regulate isn't awkward. It's self-awareness. At the same time, consent matters. Just because something helps you doesn't mean someone else is comfortable with it. So part of self-care is knowing how to ask and respecting the answer, even if it's no. And what works in one environment might not work in another. What helps you with friends might not be appropriate at work. So it's not about ignoring your needs, it's about adapting how you meet them. For example, if I am with friends and need deep pressure input to regulate, it might look more playful. But at work, I'm not going to ask a coworker to tickle me. Instead, I adjust. If I need deep pressure to reset, I might ask if someone is comfortable applying pressure to my shoulders while I'm sitting down, or help me get my weighted vest on. Same need, different environment, different strategy. That's what building a successful life looks like after graduation. Not ignoring your needs, not forcing yourself to fit in, but learning how to meet your needs in a way that works in real life. So as you leave here, you don't have to have everything figured out. You don't need the perfect job. You don't need to get it right the first time. You just need to start paying attention to yourself, your patterns, what works and what doesn't. The goal is not to force yourself into a life that doesn't fit. The goal is to build one that does. And when things feel hard, when something isn't working, when you start questioning yourself, don't ask, what's wrong with me? Ask, what do I need now? Because the moment you start answering that question, everything starts to shift. And the truth is, you already know how to do this. You've had moments where you've listened to yourself, adjusted, and figured out what worked, even if you didn't have the words for it yet. You don't need to become someone else to be successful. You just need to understand yourself well enough to stop working against who you already are. And that version of you, that's the one that actually works. Thank you.